We're one of the first players in the carbon market, and so forestry, improved cook stoves, renewable energy are the topics. Forestry, because that's the reason I went to Uganda 16 years ago to lead the technical team reforming the forestry sector. And many places are put off by the complexity of forestry carbon. But because we have all the connections, we've seen the real interest in growing trees in Uganda. That's an obvious place for us to operate.
Give us a sense about some of your projects, perhaps around forestry. I mean, what kind of level of, what size are we talking about?
So, as part of the reform, we set up a private sector forestry program that for 10 years now has been supporting community groups, individuals, small businesses. So 450 of those groups have been successfully planting trees to modern standards, whether it's trees for poles, for timber, or for fuel wood. And those guys, we can now get carbon finance as an additional incentive for themselves and for others who want to copy what they've done.
So how does this work? If those trees are going to be used at a later date for some form of industry, what's the carbon benefit?
So what you find is a bare hillside now becomes permanently forested. It's harvested in rotation, but if you were to take a photo of it any year in the future, it's now got trees with carbon sequestered, whereas 5 years ago it was a bare hillside subject to erosion. So the sequestration is now locked up, but of course a tree will get old and fall over, so before it does that you harvest it and replant. So it's all about sustainable forestry.
And what's the sort of natural benefits there? I imagine, not that I know, but I imagine Uganda's forests are full of a remarkably biodiverse set of different species. I mean, how does this benefit them if you're turning sort of forests into sort of mini agricultural factories?
Well, we're not allowed to do that. The areas that are being planted are either areas reserved for industrial forestry or it's degraded land. And because trees are now being grown on a sustainable basis, it's taken pressure off the protected areas. So the biodiversity in the game parks and the central forest reserves is now a much more secure resource for the nation because people aren't going there to get the one and only tree in the district. The trees are now being grown on farms all over the districts. And Uganda's biodiversity is phenomenal. It's got the highest bird count in Africa. If you come as a tourist, we've got the mountain gorillas. I've worked for the Wildlife Authority twice as an advisor. It's a stunning resource for the nation for tourism potential and obviously just the natural biodiversity. So getting commercial tree growing actually helps take the pressure off the natural forest.
What challenges have you faced in terms of deploying a program like this in Uganda? Have there been issues over, I don't know, verification or accounting or sort of these slightly sort of technical areas which are often seems in carbon trading to be occasionally grey areas which can be exploited perhaps in the wrong way?
In Uganda there's a lot of support from the government. I worked in the Ministry of Water and Environment, which is the host for the carbon finance topic. So we know the people there and they know what we do. Some of the biggest bottlenecks are to do with the sheer complexity of the procedures of CDM and the gold standard. And the fact that we've been the pioneer of using a program of activities approach, which creates an umbrella under which an unlimited number of projects and an unlimited number of countries can participate. So we were the first in the world to have an umbrella that covered more than one country. So it now covers 6 countries. But when you're the first doing something, there's nobody else's documents that you can read to see how they did it. So you could say that's been our biggest challenge of the time it's taken us, like 5 years to get our cook stove umbrella registered, and we got the first carbon credits last year. So you have to have a degree of patience and determination to get through that maze. So that's the challenge, and we've met it. That's the key thing.
Final question: who's investing? What sort of countries and companies have you got on board?
In the forestry sector, there's a whole range from households and communities right the way up to international companies and local companies. For the cook stove activity, it's international NGOs, local businesses, local manufacturers, coffee cooperatives, people who want to add a cook stove to the mix of what they're doing with their members. And that is now taking off. This time last year, I would have said we're waiting to see, will it take off? 12 months on, we've now got extra applicants wanting to join, and carbon finance is a reality at last.